How do you make your suffering useful? How can you make your pain useful? That's be the question that I would ask anybody, because I think the answer to that question is really the answer that everyone's chasing. Because if suffering has no meaning, if suffering has no purpose, then this life sucks. This is just a shit life if suffering has no purpose or meaning. And everyone is going to experience suffering. That's what separates me from this machine, is this machine will never suffer. What makes me human is my suffering. And when I look at Christ on the cross, I think, is that a joyful man? As he bleeds out and dies on a cross for humanity, is that man joyful? And I think the answer is yes, that even in his suffering, that's what Christ represents for me. Meaningful suffering. You know, the story of Christ is that God became man for our betterment. So that means that he is the ultimate example, the supreme priest, the ultimate redeemer. If I look at Christ on the cross, I think that's very instructive. You don't see a lot of smiley face Christs on the cross. Yeah. You don't see cross on the cross dying and laughing with aplomb, in joy, in ultimate joy. But I think they should make some Christs on the cross in ultimate serenity, in ultimate joy. They always make Christ like this sad face. And that seems stupid. It seems like it's not deep enough. Like the artists who manufacture those crucifixes, it's almost like they're not seeing the full story. And the full story, I believe, is that Christ is in maximum joy in that moment. He is fully in his purpose. And that's, if you can tap into how you can use your suffering to help other people, that is maximum joy. I always thought joy was, I get this and then I'm happy, or I do this and then I'm happy, or I get her and then I'm happy, or I make that and then I'm happy, or they respect me and then I'm happy. Or I always thought happiness was to be acquired by the things I would gain from life. That's why I was always grabbing. If I knew early on that happiness actually is in me offering all of my suffering up for other people as an instructive thing, or as something that could benefit man, then I maybe would have lived my life differently. So I guess the question I would ask anybody is how do you use your suffering to tap into your joy? How do you remix suffering into joy? I would ask anybody that. And not everybody has an answer to that. And those people who don't have an answer are not going to be happy people, because suffering is guaranteed. And unless you can take suffering and make it joy, or find suffering in your joy, not as a masochist, not as some S&M whipping yourself type of nonsense.
It's rearrange.
Yeah. How does your perspective change on suffering? How do you look at suffering like, this isn't suffering in the notional sense. This is actually my route to joy. That in and through the suffering is how I actually get to maximum joy. That's what the crucifix represents for me, and that would be the ultimate question. That's the ultimate question posed by Christianity. It's the ultimate question posed by most all Western religion. It's the ultimate question posed by Buddhism. Buddhism is all about, how do you stop needing? How do you need less? Well, the way to need less is to take stock in your suffering and use your suffering as your well of joy. You'll always have endless suffering. Every day that goes by, we die a little bit more. Just by waking up, you die a little bit more. That suffering will never cease until you're ultimately dead. So how do you actually relish in it? How do you relish in your own death? When you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they speak all about relishing in your own death. Christianity really is a preparation for death. And life, if you really value it, every second of life is preparation for something else that you know is coming. And any moment that you're not thinking about that, you're in distraction. So, and there's ways to think about it. You can either fear death for the rest of your life, or you can actually relish in the coming of something else that's bigger and more total and more visceral and explicit and fantastic and dreamlike and beautiful, that you will never be able to tap into in this life. So the question I would ask in a short, if I was to ask any artist or any kind of like deep thinker, existential questioning person, is how do you use your own suffering to tap into joy? That's the question I've never been asked because I never had an answer. Yeah.